I had no idea you were going to do that. Happy second birthday.
Thank you, Andy. Same to you.
It's been an interesting couple of years, hasn't it?
Indeed. I'm hosting. I forgot about that. Glad we've got this organized 2 years later. I am one of your hosts coming to you from the very snowy Toronto.
And I'm Andy coming to you from the very dull and wet England. Could be any time of year.
Welcome everybody to the Tea and Timbits podcast, Global Perspectives on Business Development to help you prosper. We are starting another month, and it is a birthday month. Congratulations, Andy. We've been doing this for 2 years now. It's kind of crazy. And we're going to be talking this month about forecasting and pipeline management. We'll get into that more, but as it is my turn to host, it's Andy's turn to tell us a story. So take it away, Andy.
Well, I will gladly tell a story, actually. I had an experience a few weeks back now, before our birthday, where I was visiting a company who were interested in doing some development and growth because they were in a challenging situation where they had somewhat stagnated and in some areas of the business gone backwards. And they had engaged in many in-depth conversations about the situation that they were in and the challenges that they were facing. It was clear that there was some internal politics going on and some uncertainty around the direction to move further forward, which of course reinforced the reason why they would need someone from the outside to come and assist them and guide them in giving external perspectives that could help them to grow. It went really well. Everything was going really well, and we had the final meeting with the chairman of the group, and unfortunately, it seemed that they had been somewhat influenced by the detractors in the business who were fighting for their own positions and their own growth, and to I don't know how best to describe it, but to try and use the challenges of the business to enhance their own careers, which, of course, as we both know, is very short-sighted. Because if a business is failing, then the career is not going to last very long anyway. But nonetheless, this had happened, and so I got into the room ready to go deep diving into the schedule, into the process, into the step-by-steps, and finalizing the actions, the resources, the timelines that we would be working towards to implement the change transformation. And as I say, they were not ready to have that conversation. They weren't interested in having that conversation, and they were of the belief that the best thing they could do was just hire a sales manager to run the team differently.
That's all.
Not my job. Not what I do.
So
the minute the meeting lasted only about 15 minutes, and I left.
I think it's a good reminder that a lot of times in these kinds of situations where you're proposing a new engagement, you have a fresh perspective on things, even if it is a competitive process, the biggest competitor is the status quo.
Exactly that. And I think, not reflecting on the power of the internal influence and the internal politics is also something that can help you to fall short. Whether any level of sales. I was approached about this. This isn't a proactive sale from my perspective. It's through success. It was someone else who I'd done work for previously. They recommended me. We started having the conversation, and we got to where we got to. So, in my perspective, on reflection, part of the thing that may have contributed to it is that because I was in such a strong position going into this, and I knew I was the only candidate having that final conversation, that perhaps I didn't take into account the internal politics as much as I should have done and address that up front to try and head that off. And that, of course, to me is a bit of a learning curve and a learning perspective in this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that is very valuable to any of the listeners at any stage in their career, that don't get too attached to the deal. That's very important. I wasn't. I left, and I recognised it wasn't going anywhere. So rather than trying to, save something that wasn't even there, then moved on. But also very important to not close the deal in your own head before it's actually done.
Yeah. It feels like we could probably launch right into an episode about sort of managing detractors in those situations. I was also in a room where that was not the overwhelming opinion, but it was a large decision-making group, and there was a couple of people that were clearly in that camp. And it's an interesting situation to be in, and whether you do need to manage it or just move on. But I think obviously my opinion is probably clear. Like, yes, you need to do something, but there's a few different options there. So maybe we'll add it on to the topic list for a future episode.
Well, I think it could be something worthwhile doing in the new year, perhaps.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, thank you for sharing. Probably all been in similar situations at some point. As frustrating as they are, we can't avoid them sometimes. So moving into, I guess there's probably a segue there into forecast management and pipeline forecasting and pipeline management. It's understanding what you can expect to come true, in the next fiscal year or month or what have you. So what in your assessment is involved in creating a robust forecast?
I think the reality that we need to mention before we get into this is that almost all forecasts are just theatre.
Okay. It's
I'm not
pure
saying
performance,
but I'm saying that that's typically how it falls because of the fact that people don't spend the time and effort on understanding how to forecast and the relevance and benefits of forecast. It's just something they're told to do, and it's almost an exercise of get the management off my back so I'll get it done, rather than an actual thing that's going to drive and govern the actions, the plans, and the activity of the sales force and your individual activities moving forward into the new year.
Fair enough. I still think there are elements that you need to have in place if you are going to do this well, and not just make it performative, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly my point, is that it has to be structured. It has to follow a pattern. And the problem is that most people don't do that. And that's what makes it a theatre. Right. I'm not against forecasting. I think it's very important. I think it's important to do, because then you set a goal and then you are able to set the actions and activities around achieving those goals. If you don't have a forecast, you don't have a goal. If you don't have a goal, you don't have actions. If you don't have actions, you're not doing anything. Which comes back to my story. But it's but on that point, a forecast is often seen. How can I put it? It's seen as a number that you're working towards, but it's not just that. It's more of a governance system that you use to manage your business.
So I've seen it done in a manner which I would argue is the wrong way, which I think I've seen more often than my own way, which is the business establishes what its capacity is and what its growth target, what they'd like it to be. It would be great if we could grow 20%. Okay, great. Well, that number is this. Super. Assign that to the sales team, and that's their quota, and that's what we're going to shoot to accomplish in the next year. So it's based purely on what can we produce and what would we like to produce, and go figure out how to make that happen. And I think that is just
absolutely the wrong way to do it. And I see most organizations, not all, but many do it that way. So, I think one, you cannot do this as effectively without data from the past to base it on. So at the very least, you need sales reports from your billing system. That will exist unless you're a brand new company. Ideally, it's more than that. It's CRM reports. What did my pipeline look like? How many deals did it take to, get the completed ones? Like, what's my conversion rate? What's my closing rate? And then what's the sort of pace of where things are at right now, and being able to analyze past performance behavior. Now, is that a perfect indicator of what's to come? No, but that's a key contributor to thinking about this. And then it is based on your established relationships and what you know about your current client's business and their goals and their the direction that they're heading. So, what do we know is already in the works, in the plan for some of our key accounts, and what is that going to do for us? Are they, did they just invest and now they're going to pull back? Are they growing so we can expect our order volumes to keep up? And I think that those two pieces of information are fundamental to having a robust forecast. Where it then gets a little bit more performative after that, I will concede, is where do we think we can find new logos? What markets do we want to move into? How are we going to do that and increase our likelihood of success? What do we know about those markets and the need and the size, and where do we already have some established connections and things like that to improve success? You're doing a little bit more fortune telling when you're going into new markets, but I think you still sort of can, based on that past performance and what you've seen and your, what you can translate over, you can make some more than just wishful guesses. You can make sort of educated plans that line up with goals in that regard.
I totally align with what you're saying there as well, because I think you have to have a sort of a discipline, a method discipline to your forecasting, because when you are forecasting, the process is exactly as you say. You've got to look back on what you've done, where you are, what got you there, what has been the process, what have been those the success rates and so on in the conversion, both with existing and new customers. But that then leads you into building a weighted pipeline, or I suppose looking at as well what you already have in the pipeline, and what is the time to conversion? What do you then need in your pipeline to achieve a certain goal? To just maintain what you got this year. Was this year good enough? Was it not good enough? What do we then need to do to change that? And looking at the win rate models is very important, and that together with all of these other aspects that you mentioned, I think combine to build the framework that you can put a decent number on and go, this is what we're going to achieve, this is why we believe in it, and these are the sort of actions and activities that we need to do in order to do that. I think then, as part of that forecast, you also need to have some clear milestones to say that if we get to this stage and we've not achieved this much in this, in the first month, first quarter, then we're off track. Then there needs to be some actions and activities clearly documented of what happens then, because I think part of the problem is that it gets to sort of October and people go, oh, it's the end of the year, oh no, we haven't made it yet, what should we do? Well, then it's already too late. You should have been looking at that on a much more regular basis and have something clearly documented of if this then that, kind of situation. I I have a lot of faith in these lagging indicators, looking back at and building something further forward. But I think it's also very important that we have those leading indicators as well from the sales team of, what meetings do you have set? Where are you in the in this sales process? How long does that stage typically take to move to the next stage? Yeah.
So those are all like part of having a good pipeline setup. So we sort of themed the month like forecasting and pipeline management, because without the right pipeline management, you can't really forecast very well or understand whether you're drifting from your forecast, and that needs to be recalibrated. One of the interesting things that I did a couple of years ago, and this is one thing I sort of have gotten into a couple of debates about with other sales leaders, is how do you weight your pipeline? So a lot of people will have stages. Well, we had our first meeting, then we had our second meeting, so on and so forth. And so we're moving through the pipeline and getting closer to close, but the likelihood of that closing is arbitrary. So then there's a percentage, a weighting that you give the deal. It's like, yeah, well, we're moving along, but I still don't think they're going to buy in the end. I would argue that if that's the way you're doing it, you don't have the right stages in your pipeline. You're moving people ahead just because you had a meeting. You should not be moving them ahead until you see the signal that they're ready to advance to a stronger commitment in the sales process. One of the things I did is I did a retroactive look at like all the opportunities and how many came out of the pipeline. And so I had previously weighted a brand new opportunity at essentially zero. I was like, well, I don't know. They said they needed something, but I don't know if it's well aligned yet. And so I just kind of arbitrarily was like, well, that should start at a low probability and then it should increase after that. And then I did the analysis. I'm like, wait a minute. If it even shows up in the pipeline, period, it actually has, I can't remember what the number was, I'll just make up a number, like a 20% likelihood of coming out. So even at the beginning, it starts life with a 20% likelihood. That means 1 of 5 that you put in the pipeline is going to continue. The others are going to peter out. So you can give it. So I got a little bit more scientific about that. And then I sort of did a stepwise, like, well, if it advances to the second stage, how likely is it to pop out? And then I did sort of a proper weighting. Now that probably sort of will shift as patterns and economic pressures change, but don't just be assigning your own sort of gut on that number. Let it be scientific.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very valid point. I mean, the review of the opportunities, the review of the pipeline, which then, of course, leads into a review of the forecast. It all makes sense. It all hangs together in that process, and that's a really, really smart approach of doing it. And I think there's a lot of value to be learned from that sort of micro to macro overview of all of this. And it ticks all of the boxes of what we were planning on talking about in November. I mean, we are talking about the forecast, which is the big picture, but we're also talking about the pipeline and how we're going to deliver those. So I think we've covered that very well, and I think there's a lot more to be talked about this month, and I certainly have a lot more to say on this, but I'm not going to at the moment because I could go into really boring details.
Well, we'll cover it in the future episode. Appreciate your time on this one, Andy, and thanks again, everybody, for tuning in today. If you want to catch up on back episodes and continue to hear everything there is to know about forecasting and pipeline management, you can follow us at timbits.com. We've got our socials and subscribe links and back catalog there for everybody's listening enjoyment. Thanks again, Andy.
Thank you, Scott.